welcome back to another video. Today we're going to react to a video by Hastings called Why Gen Z Abandoned Morals for Money. So I'm definitely going to react to this video, and this is definitely something that I really want to watch and react for a long time. I think it's definitely true that especially in the younger generation, that money has been a thing. Of course, people just want money and they don't care if they get it unethically or ethically. So we'll just watch this and see how my thoughts in is and how I react to it. So yeah.
At the ripe age of 5, I went to see Catch Me If You Can with my parents. If you aren't familiar with it, it follows a teenager named Frank Abagnale, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, who becomes one of the most successful bank fraudsters in US history. However, that is not the part of the movie that I found particularly fascinating when I suddenly gained consciousness a few years later. What really intrigued me was how this character could convince so many people to do whatever he wanted through sheer confidence alone. He faked being an airline pilot, a doctor, and a lawyer to such a believable degree that he was instantly offered jobs and money wherever he went. Frank hadn't even finished high school, and he probably wasn't the smartest guy ever, and yet his incredible sense of self-agency allowed him to become more powerful than anyone his age. We hear stories of fraudsters and conmen like this quite often, usually through films based on true stories that frame them as cautionary tales about what happens when you slither and slime your way through life. But I don't think that's the cultural sentiment these days. With the rise of social media and now artificial intelligence, a new type of rich, powerful youth to aspire to be is emerging, one defined by new money and few more.
Yeah, I think just lying your way through, that saying "fake it till you make it" is very common. Lying your way through life is just easy. You know, but people are not aware of the consequences over time later on.
Morals interested only in creating the most fanatic, attention-grabbing products possible at the expense of everyone else. This is the rise of the algorithmic aristocracy.
Would Charlie Kirk have gotten assassinated if he were Chad? Well, probably not, and here's why. Good-looking people experience something called the halo effect, so it's quite possible that if Charlie were to be better looking, someone wouldn't have hated him enough to assassinate him. What happened to him is quite terrible, and this might be an insensitive video to make, but I'm really trying to bring awareness to how brutal the black pill is.
Here's a guy you've probably seen on the internet lately. He goes by the online persona name Clavicular. And yes, he did just say that Charlie Kirk might have not been killed if he had been more attractive. But what you might not know about Clavicular is he has a real name. Braden Peters, born in December of 2005, was a normal kid from New Jersey. He had a dog, a father who worked a typical business job, and a mother who was a bodybuilder. You might be wondering why I'm talking about him in the past tense, as if he's passed away. That's because Braden Peters, or at least the idea of
Yeah, of course I did not know that information, but yeah.
Him has been put to the grave, evolving into a bastardized, maximized version of him thanks to the influence of social media. When Braden began browsing YouTube videos of Rich Piana and bodybuilding.com forums, his mindset on life drastically changed. Though pretty unconfident and awkward before the internet took hold of him, posts describing shoulder-to-waist ratios and jaw lines pushed his insecurities over the edge, causing him to obsess over one goal: to do everything in his power to become the most popular looks maxer who ever lived. Looks maxing, the attempt to maximize one's physical attractiveness through both common and extreme means, led Clavicular to smash his face with a hammer in hopes that his bones would grow back stronger and sharper, perform dick-ups by placing weights on his penis to increase girth and erection strength, and inject testosterone by the time he was only 14. With a lifestyle that extreme, and at such a young age no less, it was only a matter of time before the clavicular ideal began to garner widespread attention. He started uploading YouTube videos documenting his looks maxing process, injecting peptides and detailing his daily routine to manage his cortisol levels, something he repeatedly stresses the importance of.
What the
I mean, personally, I never did any of the bone smashing, never did peptides, I never did, of course, with these substances. Of course, myself, I am a lifetime natty, and of course, I do creatine and stuff, and I feel like it's not necessary for me to kind of use those things because, of course, you always want more, and feeling like you're not satisfied enough with your appearance makes you want more of the substances. So that's why I don't do it.
is this?
But overall, you can be very strong without it.
There's cheese on it.
But when he began streaming on the platform Kick, that's when he really achieved major virality. Clavicular's streams are the epitome of an absurdist postmodern society. He throws out slurs as if they're commonplace.
Thanks.
And when he's out in public, frequently gets into fights. I could go on and on about Clavicular's backstory, but
Of course, that's kind of the point where instead of just mostly the looks maxing stuff, that's when he gets into the more of that degenerate more content, and that's when that transition kind of changed, and that's when that mistake created, that barrier created, that lesson.
I think I've proven to you that Braden's new persona is largely a product of the internet and the attention economy, and in this reality, morals and positive impact become an afterthought. To really drive this point home, we can look at a more recent instance of Clavicular's extreme behavior. But before we do that, let's talk about something that allows you to create your own models and other useful items, which is today's sponsor, the Frozen Arco F.
I mean, yeah, definitely, like with more of the having that, like, doing for the good is not common, and doing bad is, seem to kind of like normal for society, you know. And I think that's when it gets kind of worse. So
If you want to check it out, you can click the first link in the description. On December 24th, 2025, Clavicular live streamed himself driving over someone in his Cybertruck. In the video, a man, later revealed to be another live streamer, is standing in front of his car being a nuisance. Clavicular had dealt with similar situations in which this guy showed up on his stream and caused problems, but this was the first time he decided to act violently. Afterward, you can even hear him say that he hoped he killed the guy.
Is he dead?
I don't know.
Hopefully.
Now, what punishment did Clavicular receive for running someone over?
I mean, for just like a random fan, it's probably definitely like a troll. Like I definitely understand why he did that. But if because I feel like that's where he created his fans off of. That's what you're attracting these people for his streams, and it's like, hey, you definitely attract these types of people. So it wouldn't be surprising, and I understand why you have to do that. So yeah.
Nothing. He spoke to the police about what happened and was free to go shortly after. You can make plenty of arguments for why what Clavicular did is, in fact, not a crime, which many people have been doing on Twitter. I'm not calling it X. But what this really highlights is that in our current society and attention economy, there are little to no repercussions for acting as flagrantly and polarizing as possible. In fact, in many cases, it is now rewarded. The clip went viral, shooting Clavicular into mainstream superstardom, even more than he was already approaching. And due to his popularity, Clavicular has had a New York Times article written about him and was even invited to walk on a runway show in New York City for the designer Elena Velez. With that kind of positive feedback for his behavior, what?
Yeah, like the fact that he definitely got away with it. It's just like, it's just so weird. Like, why? And definitely in the kind of like now, the police and these types of law enforcement nowadays, they're not doing their job more accurately. They're always like kind of assuming, and that's when people started kind of having that. That's why maybe they have a bad reputation on law enforcement itself. Allowing to let them do these, of course, these very antisocial behavior acts, and of course, they probably don't even care, and then just gonna make it worse.
What do you think that signals to him? I need to become more extreme. I need to become more confident and certain. I need to looks max even harder. I need to drift farther and farther away from deeply thinking about the world's problems and instead exacerbate them through my own actions. Now, Clavicular has evolved from the face of the looks maxing community.
I mean, yeah, like, he definitely said of one of his videos or one of his live streams or whatever that he doesn't care if he doesn't care if he lives long. Like, matter of fact, he's saying that, like, oh, it's definitely beneficial for me doing all these things because of course I have one life, and yeah, because like you only live once, like that YOLO mentality, that YOLO mentality. What else am I about to say? Yeah.
Into a mainstream personality. During an appearance on the Michael Knowles show,
And I think that's why he's doing these types of behaviors, right? Instead of identifying the situation and just trying to reflect and fix kind of that situation, trying to make it better, instead it just makes it worse, trying to exacerbate it, trying to like, oh, not care, oh, like this road is already worse, like might as well like do whatever I want, that type of mentality. And I think, you know, that's something that has the mentality of nothing to lose. And I think it's kind of that mindset thing, you know. I feel like if you try to connect back to those beliefs, those types of areas, I think it's understandable why he's doing like this, you know.
which is affiliated with Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire, he told Knowles that even though he leans closer to the political right, he would vote for Gavin Newsom in 2028 because Newsom is better looking.
Yeah, but I mean, like this next election cycle, who's going to win? It's going to be Gavin Newsom against JD Vance because JD Vance is subhuman and Gavin Newsom mugs.
JD Vance is subhuman?
Yeah.
What makes you say that?
He's got a very short total facial width to height ratio. He's obese, very recessed side profile, whereas Newsom is like 6'3" Chad.
Does Clavicular actually think this way? I'm certain there's a part of him that's been developing since his early teens who genuinely thinks he should vote for whoever is the most attractive, but a lot of what Clavicular now does and says is merely just to generate attention and therefore more money, power, and influence. In a GQ article, which has been a really useful reference for what I've been describing in this video, Kieran Press Reynolds puts it like this. To anyone in the know, Clavicular was pretty clearly just saying shit. He was put on the spot and came up with a provocative answer that fit neatly into his impossible worldview, namely that good looks are everything to the point that they can determine the course of history. He isn't going to vote for Newsom. He probably
And at that point of course, judging for looks, if this looks maxing thing has been going very popular, which is now, and people start caring about it, this could definitely lead to a lot of like very bad comparison and a lot of like insecurity because you're always judged subconsciously on it, and this could be very worse for definitely young teenagers, right?
isn't going to vote at all because he thinks politics is a waste of time. Through sensationalist behavior, Braden Peters has transformed from an average, awkward teen into Clavicular, a caricature of himself, amplifying the most polarizing aspects of his character and using the internet to reinforce the impulses behind his negative actions, neglecting any vision of a long, prosperous, and healthy future in favor of an immediately gratifying, rapid rise to fame. And here I am contributing to that by making this video. Nice. In the attention economy, where mass financial gain comes from spectacle over depth, cooperation, and intellectualism, more and more people, young people especially, abandon the search for knowledge and productive discussion and instead focus on similar, though usually less egregious, ways of cultivating attention as Clavicular does. When I speak about what drives people's behaviors in society, I always return to the word incentive, because without the proper incentives and rewards for doing good, difficult things, most young people aren't going to do them. In the past, there were strong incentives to pursue higher education and to be a decent person. People with a college degree out-earned those without across the board. Social cooperation, before the internet and smartphones made it incredibly easy to acquire our necessities without interacting with anyone in person, required at least a baseline level of manners and social skills. Now, you could argue that these qualities are far more.
Yeah, definitely social media is another big factor into it. And of course, the political stuff and all the wars and the crime definitely played a lot into the role leading to these behaviors. So I definitely agree with them on that one.
More optional. You don't need to be particularly smart to accumulate large amounts of wealth from nothing. In fact, it's sometimes more advantageous to at least act a bit stupid. You also don't need to be especially likable. All you need to do is understand something that, in the past, only the wealthiest and most insulated parts of society truly knew. The answer to the question, what gets the people going? And I believe the rise of AI has only accelerated this problem. Enter my next candidate for leader of the algorithmic aristocracy, Cluely founder and CEO Roy Lee. Now, Roy Lee is not someone I can describe as unintelligent. He was initially offered admission to Harvard, but that offer was rescinded when they found out he had a high school suspension. Instead, he attended another Ivy League school, Columbia University. I learned quite a bit about
I didn't know they can do that if you have a high school suspension.
Roy and his
I think for Harvard, yeah.
aspirations and intentions after reading the article Child's Play by Sam Criss, which, by the way, is the best article I've read this year. But for those of you who find it hard to focus on more than a few words on a page for more than a few seconds, I'll try to explain parts of the article in my own words and relate it to our attention aristocracy. Just like Clavicular, Roy is someone who harnessed the power of the internet to the point where he felt he could do and achieve anything. From the moment he began attending college, he believed what he was learning would soon become obsolete, offering little incentive towards his larger life goals. He wanted to be on the right side of AI's great divide, or as Chris puts it, the bifurcation of society. Essentially, it's just a fancy way of describing how AI is going to make the middle class basically become extinct. Acting on that desire, Roy partnered with an engineering student, Neil Shanmugam, and together they founded Interview Coder. What was Interview Coder, you ask? A tool designed to cheat on coding interviews. Using a transparent window that could overlay one side of a Zoom meeting, the LLM Claude could listen to questions and provide answers in real time. Roy even used the software during an Amazon interview and successfully received a job offer because of it. Of course, he declined the offer and instead uploaded the footage to YouTube.
I never, of course, heard of this guy or seen this guy, but yeah, I mean, very interesting story, by the way.
Which led to his expulsion from Columbia and sparked his rise to fame. Seeing how viral the clip became, Roy quickly capitalized on the hype and launched an upgraded version of Interview Coder called Cluely. Most people first heard of the brand Cluely through, unsurprisingly, a viral advertisement circulating across social media, which showed Roy using speculative Cluely-enabled glasses on a blind date. It was marketed as a cheating tool for literally everything, accompanied by the description, "We built Cluely so you never have to think alone again. It sees your screen, hears your audio, feeds you answers in."
So it's kind of like similar to that AI thing, right? Yeah, it kind of reminds of the Meta glasses, right? Of course, I'm not gonna talk too deep into it about AI. Of course, it's like, oh, it's gonna take over jobs. You know, it can take over at least more of the coding. It's been promoted and influenced worldwide, you know, so.
Real time. Why memorize facts, write code, or research anything when a model can do it in seconds? The future.
I mean, promoting this is just, you're losing the human primal aspect of life, right? And replacing it with technology, it just won't, it won't feel the same, right? As much as with that human connection, you know. So
won't reward effort, it'll reward leverage. Those words perfectly echo the central theme of this video and reveal Roy's intentions with his product. They also reflect the culture inside Cluely's offices themselves. Chris, who visited the space, describes it beautifully. On the ground floor, I found a stack of foam costumes in plastic crates, each neatly labeled Sonic Hedgehog, Olaf Snowman, Pikachu. A significant part of working at Cluely seemed to involve dressing up as cartoon characters for viral videos. Through a door, I could just glimpse a dingy fitness dungeon, housing 2 treadmills and a huge pile of discarded Amazon boxes. On one of the machines, a Cluely employee panted and huffed in the dark. We avoided eye contact. There was something he very badly wanted to impress on me, which was that Cluely cultivates a fratty tech bro atmosphere. Their pantry was piled high with bottles of something called Core Power Elite. I was offered a protein bar. The inside of the wrapper read Daily Intentions. Be my boss self. We're big believers in protein, Roy said. It's impossible to get fat at Cluely. Nothing here has any fat. The kitchen table was stacked with Labubu dolls. It's aesthetics, Roy explained. Women love Labubus, so we have Labubus. At this point in my reading,
I mean, that's very interesting and very weird at the same time. You know, you're in the meeting with him, it's like, oh, what is this, you know? Kind of raises some suspicious, like, why, you know?
it was clear that Roy and Clavicular shared many of the same underlying values. They're both people who grew up on the internet and fully understood the attention economy, thereby rejecting efforts to create something meaningful or positively influential, instead choosing to bastardize their self-image in the pursuit of money, power, and fame. Roy, like many founders in Silicon Valley, generated enormous hype around the speculation of the product rather than the product itself. He doubled down on social media attention and spent significant amounts of money producing viral advertisements, even though few people actually understood what Cluely did. Then, in June 2025, Cluely raised $15 million in a Series A round led by Andreessen Horowitz. So, what is Cluely's revolutionary product? Does it really allow people to never think again?
Yeah, you see it closely that like, oh, you like go cheat on exams, cheat on everything, Of course, like he definitely took advantage of the fact that like, oh, it's the rise of the AI, especially AI stocks. I've definitely been investing. I definitely have shares of it recently, and I've been making a good amount of profit off of them because knowing that the AI market is going up, especially Nvidia as well, Nvidia is using, I think, almost AI, and that just got their stock to be up, especially technology companies taking advantage of this, right? Yeah.
And, well, it turns out it's one big nothing burger. It's not much more than a ChatGPT wrapper, which occasionally doesn't even work, as described in the article. But somehow, they generated $15 million in funding. Why? Because in our current economy, the primary driver of wealth for the already wealthy is speculative hype and sensationalism rather than a useful, shippable product. This dynamic has existed in Silicon Valley for years, but Roy understands that it's no longer confined to San Francisco. He understands that attention is the most valuable currency of the 21st century, and being highly agentic and self-assured, he's willing to abandon higher purposes in favor of generating as much wealth as possible for himself and the small circle around him. Roy's product is also the perfect representation of our current societal incentives. Why put in a ton of effort to learn in school when it doesn't matter as much anymore? Why go through the hard work of trying to find a relationship if I can just use a dating app and take out a bunch of the awkward scene of first going up to someone and gauging whether they're interested or not? Why write a video essay on YouTube myself if I can just ask AI to write it for me? I swear I wrote this video. No, what matters is that you filter yourself, curate.
I mean, it's going on that easy path instead of going to the more difficult and more authentic path, right? And it could definitely work for the short term, but in terms of the long term, I think there's a lot of downsides and a lot of cons to that part.
Your brand and amplify the parts that get the most engagement, because with enough engagement comes financial stability, and financial stability is the backbone of nearly everything we pursue, especially in a world where the cost of living keeps rising. There are a couple of arguments I want to address that you might have. The first is, isn't it a good thing that more average people can create an exceptional life for themselves through means like social media? Yes, in theory, due to social media and the attention economy, there is more of an opportunity for the average person to make it out the mud, so to speak. I also like the fact that it forces you to develop confidence in yourself to present yourself in this way, which in most cases is a great trait to have. But the reality is, you need to be a very specific person to know how to generate attention and act and think in a certain way, which I'd argue most people can't or aren't willing to do. There's also 100% a bit of luck involved, and I dread a society where everyone's interests in how they want to contribute doesn't vary, and instead everyone just wants to become influencers. I mean, that's kind of happening already. The other argument you might make is, hasn't the world always worked this way? Like, haven't the most influential people always been the ones who are the most confident and persuasive rather than the smartest or the most virtuous? I would say yes to an extent, but today the incentives for doing genuinely good or difficult things have fallen so dramatically that an unusually large amount of people are willing to abandon authenticity and avoid the kinds of challenges that build moral character. So this is the new generation of influence, the new algorithmic aristocracy. A generation of Frank Abagnales who, through sheer confidence and abandoning of effort and morals, only focus their limited efforts on whatever causes the most people to pay attention to them, giving them insane amounts of influence and therefore opportunities for social status and wealth. Popularity is now accessible to almost anyone, but with that popularity comes a relentless competition to become the most outlandish, confident character imaginable. As for what we can do to stop this, a lot of fucking things would need to change. We would need to radically change our lifestyles and the economy and bring it to a place where we reasonably won't reach in decades. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. As I often say, seek friction in your life. Challenge yourself intellectually. Don't offload your thinking to a random online influencer's opinion. Yes, I recognize the irony. Or a chatbot, and try to articulate your own thoughts in your own words through your own writing. Engage with difficult texts. Do kind things for people simply because they are kind to do. Inconvenience yourself sometimes for the sake of others. Just be a normal fucking person, man. Not normal in the negative connotation sense, but like normal in a way that you can just have a conversation and not have it devolve into looks maxing, brain rotting, 6'7", skibidi toilet, whatever. I don't even know. I gotta keep up with the brain rot terms. I gotta stay tapped into this stuff because I feel like some of that's out of style. But you get what I'm saying, right? We gotta be normal fucking people. How about that? Let me know what you thought about this video in the comments, and if you liked this video.
Yeah, definitely a good video. Like I said, it's kind of like the attention is the new currency, and with this, of course, this endless competition, you know, people want to be the best, people want to be at the top, their egos can be like out of control, and then that's when people start to kind of like lose their character in the process, lose who they are, not being authentic. And that's when they're just doing it for the money, for the validation. And at that point, when it's not enough, they just want more and more out of it. Yes, of course, for Club Killer, definitely has a big impact on him. I think the other one too, yes, definitely has an impact. But overall, yeah, good video. I mean, at this point, it's kind of hard to kind of like solve this problem that it takes a lot of time. But I feel like yeah, there's some hope into it, and um, if the younger generations realizes this, then they could probably stop doing this. But it's probably up to them at this point. So yeah, so I think that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. My links are in the description down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.